which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Oh, does staff have any changes to the agenda that we have in front of us?
No, Mr. Chairman, staff has no changes at this time.
Any changes from the commission?
I want to make an additional discussion point for us, just to find out what the status of the planning and zoning department is for the town.
Okay. So let's go ahead and add that as a 8A, matters from commissioners. Just status of planning department.
Thank you.
Okay. Can I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda is approved. Item number 4, we have meeting minutes in front of us from the regular meeting that we had on June 5th, 2013. I've reviewed the minutes and I don't have any changes. Any changes from any of the commissioners?
I have a question for the staff.
Commissioner Lukes?
You usually have more detail on the minutes.
Yes.
Especially concerning discussion, he said, she said, and whatnot. And here you're just making a reference to a discussion on amending the bylaws. Okay. Merely just a discussion, then tabling, and that was it. I think there was more to it, and I think it should be part of the record. Okay. Especially the shining moment.
Okay, well, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Lukes, if you'd like, then you can go ahead and recommend that the minutes be amended and submitted to you, to the commission for next month's meeting, and just make that motion. And then if there's a second, then I'll get with our secretary and she can give elaborate on that particular discussion if that's what you want, and we can present the minutes to you at the next meeting.
No, okay, I make a motion to amend the minutes from the last meeting, that we get a detailed record of the discussion that ensued in relation to the amending the bylaws.
Okay, so that would be under 6A then, is that correct? Commissioner
Correct.
Lukes? Okay, all right, thank you.
We have a motion. Do we have a second? Or any discussion?
I'd like to have some more discussion on that.
Okay.
Do we have a second one?
Wait, I'll go ahead and give a second.
Okay.
So we can have discussion. What I've seen in the past, in your minutes, you want to reflect or indicate the decisions that have been made from that meeting. And yes, there should be some information in there if there was some kind of dialogue, but I would like to see what kind of dialogue you're talking about that you want to put in the minutes before.
I just want accurate reflection of what was said and by whom, just as we usually get it on any other item. This is the first time where probably a 15-minute discussion is reduced to 2-3 lines.
I have a question, if I may, Jim.
Commissioner Lee?
Was there somebody different that wrote the minutes this time than last time?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Lee, no, there wasn't. It was the same person that always does them for us now. But also, maybe as a talking point, Commissioner Lukes, we also do have a copy of the DVD of the meeting.
I realize that.
And so, you know, I don't know if that's not sufficient for you, that's fine, but I've just to point it out as a point of information, you know, that obviously is the whole record, you know, instead of just abbreviated discussion that you see here.
I agree with you, but to be consistent with what has been done in the past,
okay.
I think it would be appropriate to have what I'm asking for.
I think there needs to be some clarification. I think that you guys are all correct that the meeting minutes are normally more detailed than they are here. However, I think that perhaps Commissioner Lukes, you're looking for some details that usually do not go into meeting minutes. I know that there have been heating discussions in the past on these types of situations, but I think keeping it professional and keeping it, you know, not to the details of word-for-word quotes and stuff like that you may be looking for, but something along the lines of the discussion, I think, is certainly appropriate. So,
I'm not
if
looking.
If your motion is something along the lines of maybe more detailed, but keeping it out of the personal type of stuff that's going on, I would go ahead and approve that motion.
All I'm asking is,
Hold on for 1 second. So I think one of the difficulties that's been expressed to me in meeting minutes is that typically in a public meeting, we address each other as Commissioner Lee and Commissioner Lukes, and what that does is that allows the clerk to actually recognize who's speaking and what is said, and I think I've heard or seen that there's been difficulty in doing that. So I think generally in the running of our meeting, we can either address each other or wait to be addressed by the chairman to speak, or identify yourself. So I think that's one thing that's going to help. So I think we've become a little more lax in the banter that goes back and forth, and if we took a step back and were a little more formal, I think that would help. I think that the meeting minutes that we have in front of us is an accurate reflection of the decisions that were made. If there wanted to be more detail in there, I think we can make a mention in the minutes that there is a complete DVD of the meeting available. And if somebody wants to refer to that they can. So,
well, I still think, and this is Commissioner Lucas, in response to Commissioner Lee, I'm not looking at it for anything specific, merely accurate reflection of what happened, consistent with how things were recorded in our minutes in the past. And we can go back to the previous minutes or the ones before that, and they are much more detailed than just two-liner or 3 lines for a discussion that took probably 15 minutes. So nothing more, nothing less.
Okay.
So we have a motion, and that motion, do you want to go ahead and repeat your motion, Commissioner Lukes? What level of detail you're looking for so that we can give the clerk some direction?
I'm looking for amended or revised minutes from the last meeting on that particular item with detail which is consistent with the detail that we have seen in the past minutes.
Do you have a second, Commissioner?
I think that's consistent with the first motion.
Right.
So I think with that, we can probably take let's go ahead and do a roll call vote.
Okay. Chairman Patterson?
No.
Vice Chairman Lee?
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia?
Yes.
And
Okay. And,
Yes.
Sorry, Commissioner Lukes. Okay. All right. So,
Thank you.
All right.
so
We'll have,
let's see. So we had approval of the meeting minutes, and we had a motion to amend,
Yes.
basically a motion to amend and table these minutes.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Okay. So,
So motion made by, so the motion is actually to, I guess,
to amend.
table and amend for our next
Okay.
regularly scheduled meeting.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, I'll talk to our secretary and get you more detail on item 6, number A in the minutes
Okay.
from last meeting.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
The next,
I might make
Commissioner Lee.
Chairman, a suggestion made on this particular topic to send out the minutes beforehand substantially. That way people can send in their edits if they're in discussion about those minutes. That way we're not slowing the meeting down at the next meeting.
I don't know if that would be appropriate or not.
Rudy, why don't you go ahead and just confer with staff
Okay,
and see if that's appropriate?
Yeah,
And then you
okay,
can
I'll-
respond to us with direction.
all right, I guess I can ask our town attorney now if that would be appropriate or not. Would it be advisable to give the commissioners a copy of the minutes early before the meeting, or is that, is that okay to do that?
Well, that's fine. You get better minutes that way.
Okay, perfect. All right, I'll go ahead and try and do that. But just so you gentlemen know, our secretary is very busy at this time, and she'll do her best. She'll do her best to get you these minutes as soon as possible. But we're pretty swamped right now, so just so you understand, our staffing issues. Okay. Anything else, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, on the minutes?
No, let's go ahead and move on to agenda item number 5, citizens forum.
Okay. I guess, Mr. Chairman, nobody's wanting to speak under the citizens forum.
Just for, let's see, so we have, just for the knowledge of the public, the Citizens Forum is one opportunity to stand up and speak on any issues that may be to interest to the commission or the general public. We do have on our agenda item matters from staff. There's 2 items on that agenda, and I think there's copies of the agenda at the back of the room. There's item number 7A, which is a discussion regarding allowing agricultural uses in commercial zones. And there's a discussion item number B, discussion regarding streamlining of the zone change application review process. If you wish to speak in regards to either one of those, I would say you can go ahead and wait for agenda item 7. If there's anybody who would have anything additional to offer, now would be the time to offer it in the citizens forum.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner Lukes.
On item 7A, I know there are a lot of people in the audience that would like to speak. Would it be better in the interest of the other people that are on the agenda, could they be allowed to speak under 7A?
General, we can open a public hearing and people can discuss or present under item 7A.
Yeah.
Do we want to open that for discussion? Are you proposing that we move item 7A earlier in the agenda?
Not necessarily. I just would like to make sure that the people that have vested interest in this subject can speak.
They will be able to speak during
Okay.
our discussion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, so if nobody wants to speak under Citizens Forum, Rudy, let's go ahead and move on to agenda item 6A, preliminary public hearings, case number P&Z 2013-2.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will go ahead and read the rules for public hearings, and then I'll go ahead and describe the case to you. Rules for public hearings. In order to conduct an orderly and impartial public hearing, the chairman will preside and make all rulings for testimony given at tonight's meeting. The Planning Commission members have received and reviewed extensive materials regarding each application before the Commission tonight, including the application and all related documentation, staff reports, and any letters in the file either supporting or opposing the application. The following rules will apply. Number 1, all persons wishing to speak must first sign the speaker list and will be called in this order. Number 2, speakers will be allowed 3 minutes to address the Commission. Number 3, speakers representing other persons will be allowed 5 minutes. The speakers must show written documentation that they represent someone else. Number 4, the chairman will allow cross-examination or rebuttal if the chairman feels this is pertinent to the findings presented. Number 5, the chairman will not tolerate shouting or unruly conduct and may direct staff to have any person removed from the meeting for cause. Number 6, the chairman will then close the public hearing and allow the Commission to deliberate the pending action to be taken based on findings presented by staff and by the public. The Commission may approve, deny, approve with conditions, or postpone the decision to a subsequent meeting announced by the Commission. Number 7, the chairman will then call for the question and voting will take place as to how to proceed on the application. Number 8, anyone aggrieved by the action of the Zoning Commission may file an appeal pursuant to the appeals procedures set forth in the Town of Taos Land Use Development Code. The appeal must be filed within 10 working days of the decision. And number 9, all cases will be heard on their own merits and do not create a precedent for other applicants. Okay, so Mr. Chairman, what we have here is, again, case number P&Z 2013-2. Clark and Georgia Bruton, property owners, are requesting a variance from section 1620.120.6, subsection B of the Town of Taos Land Use Development Code, which requires a minimum lot size of 7,000 square feet for their property located at 119 Montano Lane. The applicants are requesting a variance to be able to split the property into 2 parcels that are 4,573.8 square feet and 3,307.2 square feet in size. The applicants are also requesting a variance from that same section D3 of that code of the town, and which requires a minimum of 10 feet rear yard setback for their properties, and that's located at both 119 Montano and 118 Brook Streets. And finally, the applicants are requesting a 7.5-foot setback on their property located at 119 Montano and 9.5 feet setback on their property located at 118 Brook Street. And according to the code, Mr. Chairman, the minimum setback requirements for that zone for the rear yard are 10 feet. And the subject properties are zoned R14 multifamily residential within the town limits of the Town of Taos. And Mr. Chairman, what I'm recommending as staff is that the applicants be moved forward to a final public hearing, the August 7, 2013 hearing to be exact, with the requirement that they can prove that the structures on the subject property were built prior to August of 1974. And at this point, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, I stand for any questions that you may have of me.
Does the commission have any questions for staff?
I do.
Commissioner Lukes.
What is the date significant? Why is that date significant?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Lukes, because in our code, in order for something to be considered non-conforming, legally non-conforming, you have to prove that it was in existence prior to August of 1974.
That's when the land use development code
Yeah,
was adopted.
that's in the LUDC, and that's, and so if the applicants can prove that, that house was already built, these houses were built there in the 1950s, and, that proves that they were not, they didn't create the hardship themselves because these structures were already there. So that's why, if they want the variance, I'm asking for that type of documentation.
And does that disqualify them from even qualifying for a variance if the structures were built after?
That would
Are we
be,
still empowered to grant the variance?
you're still empowered to grant the variance based on all
Okay,
the evidence that's presented and all the different criteria
Okay,
that needs to be met.
that's what I wanted to know. That's
Commissioner
the
Luke
bottom
said,
line.
Commissioner Luke said, I believe it really applies to, I think it's the
practical
fourth.
difficulties.
Practical difficulties were not created by the applicant. So those are the 5 criteria that we evaluate
Yeah.
a variance by.
Got you.
Any other questions for staff from the commission?
No, thank you.
And are we going to have
Commissioner Lukes?
the applicant speak on this? Explain the motivation behind this?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Lukes, yes, they will present their case to you, and if you have any questions for them, you can do that. And then also, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, the applicants have submitted to me some color photographs, properties that are adjacent to theirs that kind of demonstrate, part of what they're, and I can give these to you at the next meeting, or if you'd prefer, I can give them to you now.
I would say let's go ahead and pass them out now.
Okay.
And then if there's nothing else from staff or the commission, I'd like to go ahead and invite the applicant up to either present their case or offer anything additional. And if you would, you can step right up to the microphone and we'll wait for Rudy to address you and swear you in. Not yet. Yeah. You can stand at the microphone here. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I have the paper with that.
Go ahead and state your name for the commission.
Donna Brunton.
Thank you, Donna.
And do you swear to tell the truth?
Yes. Sir.
Okay, thank you. Please give us a brief presentation of what you're asking for.
Okay. The property was all connected at one time. The little house on Montana was actually a studio, an art studio for Mr. Merrill. And after he passed away, his wife deeded the property to the lady who basically took care of her. And so she gave a section of the big house to her, I think, to make it, as I don't know when it became a law, a rule, whatever, but you had to have 7,000 square feet. And I think that's why she gave that chunk. So it's kind of awkward because this big chunk of land on the side of the big house is with this little house. And there's already a fence line.
Excuse me, ma'am. Excuse me, can you speak into the mic?
Oh, sorry.
That's okay.
There's already a fence line, and we just want to take the fence line straight across and put the big piece of property with the big house and keep the other property with the little house. And I do have the papers that they were built in 1940.
So basically, you're requesting to make one new lot line in between the two houses.
Exactly, where that line is on
Mm-hmm.
the
Okay.
which is to take that line, this line, straight across.
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Lukes.
does the staff have the evidence of
You have all
when
this.
when the homes were built? that they are requesting? Do they already have it?
Do you have that? I don't.
No, that, she just,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Because I just got the letter that you needed that.
Oh, okay. Thank
I
you.
would go ahead and you can turn that into staff, and they can present that to us at our next public hearing. So we'll have today is our preliminary public hearing. If we choose to approve it onto a final public hearing, you'll come back for a final public hearing, and at that point, you're either approved or denied. Okay? Are there any other questions from the commissioners for Ms. Brown? No?
I'm good.
Okay.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
Is there anybody in the audience who has signed up to speak on this case? Nobody signed up, Mr. Perea?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. So with that, I think we can close the public hearing. And I would entertain either discussion from the commissioners or a motion.
I'm ready to make a motion if there is no discussion.
Is there any discussion from any of the commissioners? None? Commissioner Lukes?
I make a motion to approve preliminary hearing on PNZ 2013-2 and move it to final hearing August 7th for final approval.
And before we have any discussion, may I have a second?
I'll second that.
So we have a motion and a second. I should have asked this question while Donna was standing up in front of us. Is there access, will both pieces of property have access to a public street?
Yes, they're on.
Let's go ahead, actually, would you
Yes,
please
you can
step back up and...
step to the mic. Yeah. No, that's okay. Thank you.
So, and this would be addressed to either the applicant or staff. So Rudy, we've confirmed that both pieces of property will have access to a public street.
Yes, sir. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Do both pieces of property have independent water and sewer, or are they on the same utilities?
No, they're separate.
Independent water and sewer?
Mm-hmm.
Rudy, would this end up with, right now we have one piece of property that has an address on Brook Street.
Mm-hmm.
Would the second house then have a separate address on Montano?
Mr. Chairman, they'll keep the on Montano. They head at 119 Montano for the house that's situated for their access there, and then the other house is at 118 Brook Street. So they would keep those addresses, even when they were ready to get their property, split.
And Donna, are right now, are both of these houses under one title?
Yes.
Okay. Would there?
Are they? I don't know.
Yeah.
I think so. No, they're not.
Okay.
No, because one.
Yeah. So they're under two separate titles.
Yes.
Already.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. That's all I have.
Okay.
Thank you. So I think the only thing I would have to offer in cases like this is that I think we have a lot of lots downtown that are non-conforming. I think it adds to the kind of the historic texture of our downtown. And I think when we end up splitting small lots, a lot of times they can be a little bit messy in terms of access and utilities. And when there's not an issue of access or utilities and it makes sense as two individual parcels, I think it's a perfectly useful form of the variance to have. So we have a motion and a second. Rudy, can we have a roll call vote?
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Patterson.
Yes.
Vice Chairman Lee.
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia.
Yes.
Commissioner Lukes.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you next month. Yeah. And with that, we can move on to agenda item 6B. It's our second preliminary public hearing.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman. Could
Mr.
we-
James.
I'm sorry, I'm sleeping at the switch today. It's been a long day. I think when the commission votes on this as a final matter, it needs to take up all 4 variance requests separately and vote on each. So I would ask staff to set that up in that way so that we're not log rolling. It's conceivable that the commission would want to grant 3, not 4, 2, not 4, 1, not 4, whatever. So we would ask that when this comes back, it be set up for separate votes on each, and we would ask for a finding of fact on each so that we can start to begin the process of cleaning up our record in case there are appeals.
Thank you, Mr. James.
Thank you.
And with that, Rudy, we can move on to item 6B when you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is case number PNZ 2013-3. Robin Martin, property owner Taylor Etchemendy, sorry about that if I mispronounce it, agent, are requesting a conditional use permit to operate a daycare center on a property located at 120 Camino de la Placita. The subject property is zoned CBD, which means Central Business District, within the historic overlay zone of the town of Taos. And Mr. Chairman, what staff is recommending is that this case be moved forward to a final public hearing on August 7th, 2013. And with the following conditions. Number one, the applicant will need to submit to the Town of Taos Planning, Zoning, and Buildings Department all applicable documents from the state of New Mexico's Children, Youth, and Family Department that indicate the regulations have been met. Or in other words, she just needs to show us that, they've approved, that the CYFD has approved their daycare center and that all the proper licenses have been, given to them. And then also under what I'd also recommend is, and that was the biggest recommendation I have, Mr. Chairman. The other two recommendations I have would be as conditions of final approval, which I will mention in my next staff report. But for now, that's staff's recommendation. At the final public hearing, the applicant would have to submit that information. And I stand for any questions at this time.
Are there any questions for staff from the commissioners?
I don't know if the question should be directed to him or to the owner, but I did notice the lease.
This is Commissioner Garcia for the record.
August 31st, 13, is there going to be a new lease executed? This granting?
I would defer to the applicants to answer that question, Commissioner Garcia.
Oh, hold on. Let's go ahead.
You have to come up and speak on the mic. Sorry.
Let's go ahead.
Well, if you want, you can speak here. That way you don't have to go up there.
Wow. Those kids are rough, huh? So let's hold on one second here. So Commissioner Garcia has a question about the lease. Before we open it for the applicant, are there any other questions from the commissioners for staff? And if there aren't, let's go ahead and introduce our applicant. Go ahead and state your name for us.
Okay, I'm Taylor Etchemendy.
And Rudy.
And
Rudy,
and do you swear to tell the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Please proceed.
Good evening, Taylor. Welcome.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Can you restate your question, please?
Yeah, there's a document that was applied, which is the lease.
Uh-huh.
And the lease indicates the expiration is August 31st, 2013.
We have a current lease that's good until August 1st of 2014.
Oh,
And then
okay.
it'll be renewed every year.
Okay, so there's another lease besides what I'm looking at.
Yeah, apparently that's not the current copy.
Okay, that's all. That's the only question I had.
Have you been operating in this location?
No.
Uh-huh.
This is
a new use?
completely,
Uh-huh.
totally new use, yeah.
Excellent. Okay.
So should I state my intention?
Please do.
Okay. The intention is for the space to be used as a bilingual early learning center for ages 6 weeks to 5 years. We are not making any changes to the property besides creating a play area space in the parking lot that is on what side is that? The west side?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
The west side parking lot.
Yeah, the west side.
So that will be partitioned off for a play space for kids. But all of the parking requirements, as per the Town of Taos regulations, will be met. And the CYFD has already approved the use of this space without any changes. And so I'm going to ask a question here. What is the kind of protocol? Because CYFD is waiting for us to get approval from planning and zoning in the Town of Taos in order to give us the license. So I'm wondering what...
I think so you're here tonight for a preliminary public hearing. If we approved you tonight to move on to a final public hearing, you'll come back next month. At that final public hearing, our approval could carry a condition that you also have the approval from CYFD, but you'll leave here with a final approval from the commission, and you'll be able to get final approval from them. So they kind of go hand in hand.
Great.
Yeah. Oh, just for the record, in the applicant's packet is a floor plan for the Old Taos News Building that was generated by my firm, Living Designs Group Architects. I don't have any association to this applicant or no financial interest in any way, and I don't feel the need to abstain myself in this case. Any other questions for the applicant and the commissioners? If there's none, I think we'll go ahead and open it up to the public. Is there anybody here that would like to speak on this case?
Mr. Chairman, there's Tracy Jaramillo has signed up, but I don't know if, no? Okay.
She's my mom.
Okay.
She was just signing in.
Okay, so no, she doesn't want to speak then. Okay, so that's the only person
That was
other
a scary idea.
Yeah. Okay, so no, Mr. Chairman, there's nobody.
So I think we can go ahead and close the public hearing portion of this case. And we could either have discussion or I would entertain a motion in the commission.
Chair, I'd like to make a comment that
Commissioner Lukes?
this is a perfect case that under streamlining that could be approved in one meeting. Just for the once again, just want to bring up the streamlining and the benefits of it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. James?
one of the criteria I think that the applicant is going to need to meet is the building code compliance. The lease indicates that to avoid pipe damage from freezing, we are requesting to keep water dripping in the 2 bathrooms during the winter, which would suggest to me that it's going to be difficult to, and I know this applicant wants to get started and wants to rock and roll with this. Since that is one of the criteria, it might be a simple matter of fairness to advise the applicant that that could be an issue relative to our conditional permit criteria.
Thank you. Duly noted.
And that's great to know.
Commissioner Garcia. I don't mean to interrupt.
Chairman,
you
no,
you can say Commissioner Garcia or I can before you speak each time.
But that is not the role of the planning and zoning. That is commission, the commission to determine that is a requirement or an issue that needs to be addressed. Shouldn't that have been addressed with the planning and zoning and their department to indicate that that could be an issue with the building code?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Garcia, if I may, I refer to page 3 on the staff report under the section Planning, Zoning, and Buildings Department under item number 2. That's one of the things that will have to be addressed by the applicants before they are open for business. So if you read that, I'll just go ahead and read it for the public's information. It says here, the applicant will need to submit a letter from her architect that certifies that the subject building complies with all applicable building and fire codes as a condition of approval of the requested conditional use permit. So, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Garcia, what we will ensure before the applicant is given a business license to operate, that we will verify that she has done so. So just for
thank you for that.
Yeah,
it was in there, so yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I'm ready to make a motion if there is no further discussion.
I think, Rudy, I didn't see that in the write-up. I think based on that, we have been the architect for Chris Baker. He owns the Taos News building. And if they need additional uses from an architect, they'll probably turn to us to do it. So I think I should go ahead and abstain from a vote on this issue.
Okay.
But I think with that, I'll abstain from the vote, and we can go ahead and call for a motion. Commissioner Garcia?
No, I have to make a motion first.
Motion.
That's okay. Make your motion.
Oh.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion to approve case number PNZ 2013-3 based on findings of facts and conditions as articulated by the planning staff, and move it for final approval on August 7th meeting.
So we have a motion from Commissioner Lukes. May we have a second?
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Vice Chairman Lee,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Lukes.
Yes.
Okay, and let it be noted for the record that Chairman Patterson has abstained from voting on this particular case.
Thank you. And we will see you at our next regularly scheduled meeting.
Thanks.
We can move from there on to agenda item 7A, matters from staff. Discussion regarding allowing agricultural uses in commercial zones. Mr. Perea.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I was directed by my boss, my acting director, Oscar Rodriguez, to put this on the agenda. And I don't see him here tonight, but he was the one that was going to lead the discussion on this. But it's my understanding from my boss that he was looking at revising some of the permitted uses that would be allowed in commercial zones that we have currently in the LUDC, which are M1 light manufacturing, C1 neighborhood commercial, C2 general commercial, and so those would be the ones that and then CBD, Central Business District. So it was my understanding from my boss that he wanted this on there so we can have a discussion about agricultural uses, and he wanted the feedback from the commissioners to see what their thoughts were and possibly amending the land use development code to allow for such uses. And so at this point, I would just ask for your feedback so we can, I can get some direction from you, and then I can give that to my boss, and we can move either way on this item. So at this point, I just want to open it up for discussion for the commission.
And from the commission, Commissioner Garcia has his LUDC in front of him, as should I. And Commissioner Lukes has his. In the LUDC, in each individual zone, we basically have the permitted uses
Yes.
in each individual zone. So is our planning director, Mr. Rodriguez, proposing that agricultural uses be added to the permitted? We have accessory uses, conditional uses, and principal uses.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Commissioner Lukes.
The absence of that use not being listed under the C1 or C2 zoning, does that mean that it's not permitted?
That's correct, Commissioner Lukes, yes.
That means I don't think I saw it even under residential uses as listed as permitted use.
That's
so that
correct,
means,
Commissioner.
So
yeah.
you can't have a garden. You can plant things, produce. I don't get it. So
Well,
the silence means prohibition.
yes, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Lukes, there are specific standards, like if you look under RA, for example, residential agricultural, that's where it really talks about, agricultural uses, it specifies things like, you can have so many farm animals per acre, you can have, farms and things like that. In other words, the types of uses that the LUDC addresses are like for, shall we say, I guess heavy duty agriculture. Like the type of agriculture that would have an effect on an adjacent property owner, or the type of agriculture that is visible and apparent to everybody, and that could possibly.
And the type of plant.
Yes, I guess so. But that would be my interpretation, that of course people can have their own private gardens. What this does is address specific, agriculture as a business, agriculture as, the mainstay for that property. That's my reading of the LUDC when it talks about it in residential agricultural zones. That's a type of agriculture that my boss, I believe, wants to permit in commercial zones.
Mr. Chair, I have a real problem with that just mere exclusion equals prohibition. It just doesn't make sense, because there's no permitted agricultural use I don't think under any zoning designation except RA. So that would mean when we drive around and we see gardens, we see a lot of violators that should be red tagged.
Maybe we could Mr. James, I mean, could you help us clarify when something becomes a permitted land use versus something that is, I guess, an accessory use that occurs on a property? I don't think this is, I agree with you, Commissioner Lukes. I think the discussion we're having tonight, though, is agricultural. Would agricultural activity be an acceptable activity in the C1 and C2 zone? So I'd say if we can limit our discussion to that, I think it would be productive. I think the item that you're bringing up is a valid discussion item. I think there's probably another discussion that could take place around that. And I forget where it is, Rudy, you've pointed it out in the past, but it's basically in the application of this code, whereas if it's not stated as a use, that it's prohibited. So if we wanted to make an amendment to that, we would make an amendment in a different section of this code that would deal with that issue. But I think for the discussion tonight, I think we should keep it focused on agricultural use in the C1 and C2 zone. If you'd like to add that, we can add that as another discussion item to the agenda, either for tonight or another night. But I would say let's keep it focused on the C1 and C2
the reason
zone.
why I'm bringing it up is because, adding it to the code, we're looking at a long-term process, and I know there are people in the audience that want to pursue agricultural uses in those zonings. So, and maybe that will be a different part of our discussion to find a way to help them accomplish that before the actual act of amending the code takes place. This is agrarian community, and to have a specific permission to pursue agricultural is kind of bizarre. Anyway.
Mr. James, do you have any input on that?
Well, if I might, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Typically, zoning codes are written the way ours is written, that if it's permitted, accessory, allowed, then it's fine, and if it's not, then it's not. And the reason for that is it is really, really hard to write a zoning code that anticipates every conceivable use. You would have a very, very long document. Second of all, the act of gardening is not what the code anticipates when we're talking about agriculture. Third of all, there are important tax implications, real property tax implications, since the agricultural rate, I'm told, is substantially less than the commercial rate. And the reason I think the Commission is being asked for this input is that we have a very, very strong agrarian policy in our planning documents, and this is, as the community grows larger, it becomes much more problematic when you have a lot of commercial uses that are butting up against residential uses. So the devil being in the details is, how do you define agriculture, and do we want as a community to say that property that's zoned commercial that abuts next to a neighborhood is inappropriate for cattle farming, for example, which tends to stink, or pig farming, or any of the other animal excrement type farmings.
And I think
so it's a very, very complicated issue. It's not just we're allowing gardens or not. It's very complicated.
And I was thinking out loud a little bit at the same time, and I just pointed out to Commissioner Lukes the definition for agricultural land use in the front end of our land use development code. And I think that's the difference between agricultural use and gardening. And agricultural use is land use characterized by activities involving growing, producing, and harvesting crops and or raising livestock for personal or commercial use. The term refers both to farming or ranching activities, as well as to private farm ranch dwelling units, stables, stalls, barns. Specific uses in this title classified agricultural land use are agricultural and ranching, farms and ranches, farm and ranch labor housing, temporary roadside stands offering only farm products for sale. So I think it's basically the tipping point is when it becomes a commercial use. So production of food for one's own use is not an agricultural land use. Production of food at a commercial scale is an agricultural land use.
May I make a suggestion? This is Commissioner Lucas.
Yep.
I agree. Let's focus on how do we proceed with the code amendment, and then after we do that, let's hear from the audience.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Is there any other comments or questions from the commission?
I think I have several, but I'd rather hear from the community before I
Agreed.
stick my foot in my mouth.
So Rudy, when we have a matter of discussion, it's not really a public hearing.
That's
We
correct.
just invite people to come up and speak as they may. We don't have to swear them in.
That's correct, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman, because it's not a public hearing, so they don't have to follow that formal process.
Okay. So I think it's more orderly when individuals do come up and address the commission. If we want to keep it a little more informal, they can take the chair next to Rudy, or you can stand at the podium and speak. At this time, I think I would go ahead and open it up to the public for discussion. If somebody, Rudy, do you have a sign-in list for discussion? Or is that only for?
Well, I have a sign-in sheet as an attendance record, so I would just
Okay.
recommend, Mr. Chairman, that they sign in just to
Okay.
show that they were here and, you know.
Just sign here.
So
their
I'd like
comments
to go ahead and just invite the public to come up and speak one at a time. We'll probably make sure your name's on the sign-in sheet, and you can either stand at the podium or have a seat next to Rudy. Yeah.
All right, so I brought everybody some
Nice
fresh
display.
produce.
Yeah, thank you.
And you can, there's lettuces and salad turnips.
We
and-
can't accept bribes.
Oh, sorry, here.
Yeah.
Speak for yourself.
And for the commission and for the public, let's go ahead and just state your name for the record.
Is that good?
Yeah, that's fine, thank you. Thanks.
Let's see. My name is Micah Roseberry, and I've been a farmer and a teacher here in Taos for 25 years. I've been working with a project this last year that is, in a way, the farm in question, but I think it really brings a bigger question to Taos, the town of Taos, about promoting agriculture and some different things that our citizens have actually spoken for and against. And I just would like to start by mentioning that this particular commercial property was actually in 1999 the proposed site of Super Walmart. And I will admit to you, I myself probably was speaking out against the Super Walmart. And I know that there were a lot of people who attended that. And so I just would like to say that I've been working the last year with Joni and Roy Cunningham, who are the owners of this farm. And we've been working, it's about 3 years now. This is the third year of that farm. And I think it's a great use. I feel like we got kind of a public vote about how we want to, what we want to see. And I just want to start with that's the piece we're talking about. And here is a packet that's been prepared for you, and I'd just like to pass that out right now.
Thank you, Micah.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hang on one moment. So I would just like to say that it's an incredibly beautiful farm. There are some photographs at the beginning and then partway through that are from a letter from Karen Moulton from Taos Academy supporting the farm. Those students, probably 60 students, have been coming down in the spring and in the fall, 2 or 3 times a week. It's part of their curriculum. And there is a letter of support for the project from Karen in here. There's also other visitors who've come have included the Sangre de Cristo Youth Ranch, also the Rocky Mountain Youth Corps, the permaculture class from UNM, and all of these groups are all coming on an ongoing basis and have plans to use the farm as a teaching farm in the future. So that's really the background of the farm. And I think that this year we've included some additional equipment, the purchase of a tractor, a rototiller, a bed shaper. I actually have a farm, Cerro Vista Farm, that is 6 acres of vegetables, and I've been selling at the farmers market. I have a 200-member community-supported agriculture program, and so I've been, in a way, I guess, giving some technical assistance to the farm to help make it, as productive as it can be. And I'm actually working with a number of other education projects in Taos, including Parfield and a little Enos Garcia garden. And I would like to call your attention, there's also a letter from another neighbor there, is Carl Colonius with the Rocky Mountain Youth Corps. There's a letter also from Sharon Leach from UNM, who's the permaculture teacher there. And there's actually also a letter from myself as a local farmer. And I also attend the farmers market and belong to a women's farming group of 40 farmers. And we farmers really want to promote agriculture here and really stand by each other. So I felt, since this was a discussion, that we didn't all need to come tonight, but we would be happy to. I also would like to just read for you, there's a letter that I think explains a little bit about this particular reason we're here tonight. And it's written, I'll just take a moment to read it. Dear Town of Taos Planning and Zoning Commissioners, we have compiled this informational packet in order to familiarize you with our agriculture project located south of town on the corner of Paseo del Pueblo Sur and Paseo del Cañon. It is our hope that the Town of Taos will elect to change the Land Use Development Code to allow agricultural use and agricultural buildings on C1 and C2 zone property within the city limits. During meetings with the town manager and the mayor, we stipulated ways to prevent negative impacts from this change. Some of the preliminary ideas moving forward included limiting the number of animals per acre and placing a minimum on the amount of acres to be used. Everyone seems to feel that this change is a good idea, and we are confident that the details can be worked out so that this change would be a very positive outcome for our community. We ask for your support to amend the LUDC, and we appreciate your continued dedication to public service for our community. Thank you, Joni and Roy Cunningham. So I'd also just like to say that there's, in the packet is also a local food and agriculture, sort of a, what would it be called? It's the Climate Action Plan from Albuquerque. And there were just a few things that I thought were really interesting, because I think when you're looking at changing codes and like how are other cities or other places looking at this, and I honestly was like Googling like Portland and Seattle and kind of places where I'd heard that there were all these edible park gardens and things, and I was kind of surprised to find right here in New Mexico, Albuquerque has a really extensive kind of a take on agriculture. And one of the strategies that they've identified is to increase the amount of food produced inside city limits, strategy 2, support the development of the food shed in New Mexico, strategy 3, incorporate food and agriculture in planning, landscaping, and design, and strategy 4, engage every city department in promoting local food production and consumption. So I just wanted you to know that there were some resources at hand, and I think it's really cutting edge here in Taos for us. There's a big push towards agritourism, towards local production of food. It's actually, honestly, a huge economic possibility for our area here, and I personally have been involved in building that capacity with farming, and I feel like that it's really our roots here, and that it's a great way to really incorporate like the tradition and the elders with the youth. And I also work with Miguel Santisteban and the camp program, and there's just a lot of possibilities here that we're looking at beyond kind of just, I guess, in a way, selling vegetables. But I do think that, it's really important to make things sustainable, and that does mean selling vegetables and encouraging people to eat fresh vegetables. And I know we have a huge diabetes problem in Taos and in New Mexico, and I don't want to go on and on about all the statistics, but I just would like to encourage you to really take a look at this. And in a way, it's one piece and it's one project, but it also represents, I think, a real step that we could take as a community. And I feel certain that we would have the community behind us. So thank you.
Thank you, Micah. Is there anyone else that'd like to speak on this issue? Yeah. Hello.
Oh, sure.
Please have the signage. Thank you. Where do I go here? Right here?
Yes, ma'am, right there. No, that's fine, as long as you say. Thank you.
Okay.
Welcome. Would you please state your name for the commission and the public?
Good evening. Yeah, my name's Claire DeGaia. Hi.
Welcome, Claire.
Hi. I've been growing food all my life, and I'm a registered nurse for over 36 years. And last year I went and got my permaculture design certificate, and I just really am amazed at what they're doing at this farm. And I'm also amazed at the work that Micah Roseberry has done in this community, and Miguel Sanesteban and so many others. And I don't know if you guys really go to the farmers market. I would invite you to go if you've never been there on Saturdays. We're having tremendous weather changes, and the kind of work that the farmers are doing right now are going to address dry land farming at some point, which is important. So I just really hope and pray that you would support all the farmers in this community, because there may become a day that you're going to be really grateful that you did to ensure food for this community. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? Come on up. You want to speak too?
Okay. Yes, please. Okay, thanks.
Welcome.
My name's Taylor Purcell, and I'm just a close family friend of the Cunninghams, and I've lived here and been a part of their family for my entire life here in Taos. So, and Roy's son Ben is my best friend, and his mother lives on the land above this property. And growing up, has been nothing but a barren desert for the last decade. I can remember broken bottles and glass and, garbage. I'd love to see something happen to the property, and, just from the youth perspective, I've seen it do a lot for the community, and I'd like to see more things like that happen. Just wanted to put a word in, and that's all I got.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Yeah, go ahead and sit. All right, thank you.
Hello.
Welcome.
My name is Ryan Shear, and I'm a farmer on the farm in question. And kind of nervous, I don't know why, but we put a lot of effort into this farm this year. In the past years, other people have too. And I just wanted to ensure you that the intentions of the farm are the community first. We're not looking to make a bunch of money from vegetables. We're looking to educate, provide an organic food source, and to be a servant to the community. Thank you.
Thank you.
Round of applause.
That's appropriate.
Would anybody else like to speak? No. Okay.
So, Chair, I have a question.
Commissioner Lukes.
For the staff, what do we need to do to? I see a letter from Bill Morris in the documents. What do we need to do to help him accomplish what they would need to accomplish until the code is changed? Or is the letter from Bill Morris a permission for 2 years to continue agricultural activities? If not, what can we do to help him with that?
And in addition to that, if I may, I'd like to, Rudy, if you could help us clarify, if the agriculture that's going on there is not a commercial use, meaning they're not necessarily out there, is what's going on, is the farming that's going on there right now a non-conforming use? Is there any action that's being implied or considered by the town to stop the use that's taking place there now?
Mr. Chairman, Mr. and Mrs. Cunningham's property, there's 3 different zones on that property. There's C1, C2, and ARO. So if there's any farming activities within the ARO zone portion of the property, then it's a permitted use and there's no issues. If there's farming activities going on in the C1 and C2 portions of their property, then that's, that's an issue as far as the zoning regulations are concerned.
And the farming that's going on there now, is that on a piece of ARO or is that on a piece of C1 and C2?
It's my understanding that there's bits and pieces, on both
Okay.
both portions, ARO and and commercial. And as far as the letter goes that Mr. Morris gave to the Cunninghams, I would defer to our town attorney to give you some feedback on that, to see,
Mr. James, do you have any comments on the letter that was written by Acting Planning Director Bill Morris to the Cunninghams?
First of all, let me say I love farmers. My grandparents were farmers. I'm not a vegetable user myself, and actually these things smell pretty bad to me, but I mean, that's just the way it goes.
That's a bias.
My general comment about letters from the planning director, and I think we're about to name a new planning director who will not be issuing such letters. They're misleading and useless. And it's if there's an issue, then we need to address it in the code. I think that vegetable farming abutting against commercial or residential areas is likely not an issue unless there's a composting issue. Cattle farming, pig farming, chicken farming, goat farming, anything that poops farming is an issue. And they're two totally different things, but the way to address this is to address it in the code, not with a letter that says, well, the code says one thing, but we're not going to do it. I mean, that's just totally inappropriate.
Thank you.
And I've told Mr. Morris that when he was here.
Thank you. Commissioner Lukes, I'm not sure. I think I may have distracted both staff and commission from your original question.
Bill Morris's letter clearly says that agricultural development of your properties will be permitted on a temporary basis basically until October 2014. So, council, that letter is useless?
Mr.
To me, it's
Morris
clear what it says.
The planning director has the ability to interpret the code. The planning director does not have the ability to obviate the code, ignore the code, rewrite the code. So this is not a matter of interpretation. This is a matter of essentially the planning director imposing a moratorium on enforcement of our code until such time as the code can be repaired, if it needs to be repaired. Unfortunately, that was not combined with any effort by Mr. Morris to come forward with some fixes to the code. So
yeah, this is the first time we've heard about this issue. I have heard about this issue. So,
if I may, is there an impetus or a reason to do something quickly to allow this use? I mean, is this use being threatened to be red tagged by the town, or shut down by the town, or stopped by the town in any way, Rudy?
Mr. Chairman, well, technically this is a violation of the code again, just because, as I've stated earlier, agricultural uses are not permitted or accessory use in commercial zones. So technically at this point, if the applicants are farming within the commercially zoned portions of their property, then technically it is a violation of the Land Use Development Code. And again, however, if they are farming within the ARO, which is Agricultural Recreation Open Space portion of their property, then it's a permitted use and they're fine. So at this point, technically, it is a violation of the code.
Mr. Chair.
And Commissioner Luke, your question was,
well,
is there something that
we can do? Can we just call it growing vegetables? It's not agricultural use; it's growing vegetables, and no pooping is taking place. The agricultural. I understand it is a broad, all-encompassing term, as cattle, pig farm, whatever. This is just growing vegetables.
Commissioner,
yes.
Yeah,
I'm done. Thank you.
Looking for for solutions, not discussion here. Is there a way that we can create an action item on the next meeting to create by motion a moratorium against this particular farm, stopping any potential attempts to violate them on this farm, and then somehow create some kind of, they seem to have all the knowledge about local agriculture. What I would want is I want information on how we could adopt something appropriate, frankly, rather than hearing from somebody that doesn't eat vegetables and somebody that's the only staff member in our planning department. So maybe we can do something where we can say, hey, we're not going to touch anything on your farm, but why don't you turn around and bring us some ideas on how we can create a code that's appropriate for Taos, since you guys know.
Can we do it today? Why wait until next meeting?
So,
Well, I don't think we can create an action item, and I don't even know if we can do a moratorium on a violation, so.
I don't think the Planning and Zoning Commission can. I think that has to be done by town council. To the extent that it helps anyone get their arms around this, I have not been asked to do any research or put into motion anything to, I didn't know these folks existed. So, I mean, that's all there is to that. The other thing that might be salient is we are in the process of hiring a planning director. I believe the interviews were done this week. I believe a candidate was selected, but I don't know that they've been vetted and accepted. The town's building code enforcement person resigned this week. So we don't even have anybody to ticket anyone, which I guess I shouldn't say over the television, but I mean, for purposes of this growing season, no one has to worry about getting their vegetable farm interfered with. We don't have the capability at this point.
And how can we start the process to amending?
So, Commissioner Lukes, the next step, if we wanted to modify the LUDC, an ordinance would be drafted to add language to the C1 and the C2 zone. So all it would take would basically be someone drafting an ordinance, and that would be brought in front of this commission for approval. If we choose to approve that ordinance, then it goes on to town council. Is that correct,
That's
Mr.
correct.
James?
That's absolutely correct.
What action do we have to take to get the process going?
We basically have to put an item on our agenda to review a draft ordinance. So if there was a draft ordinance ready for our next regularly scheduled meeting in August, we could choose to approve that ordinance, and it would be, from there, it would go on to the next regularly scheduled town council meeting. And once that ordinance is passed, it would be a permanent change to the LUDC to allow agricultural use in the C1 and C2 zone. And I think we have adequate language in the LUDC. It just needs to be collected and proposed as an ordinance.
And, if I may, Commissioner Lucas again. I think it might be even a little different designation than agricultural, because I don't think we want cattle operations or big farms. So we might call it something different and allow that use. So what do we do? Do we instruct staff today to come up with an ordinance for our review?
If you instruct staff, we may have to wait several months until they get to it. So I would propose it could be anyone in the audience. It could be any one of us. It could be anybody can basically bring a draft of an ordinance back in front of us for approval.
I think we should utilize our legal mind.
I see a lot of hands out there, and let us finish our discussion, and then we'll ask for some more input. Okay?
Maybe Commissioner Lee could help us with that.
Well, I think there's a distinction for me.
Commissioner Lee.
Sorry, Commissioner Lee. There's a distinction for me in the commercial agricultural farming for meat, for animals, because frankly, two cows, a horse, a couple goats, maybe 5 pigs, maybe they're selling them. That's commercial, but does it have an effect on the land? I don't know. I think that there's a lot of very specific details that probably need to be addressed. Is it affecting the groundwater, stuff like that? Is it affecting businesses next to it? I mean, obviously we don't want a 2,000 cow farm, but at the same time, does it make sense to allow people to have meat being grown and sell it in the community? I think there's a lot of detail here, and I think that the community, the people that are doing it, could come forward with some different things that have been tried in other communities. I know that
people try all the time and they fail, and some things work and some don't, and some work in some communities and some work and don't work in others. So my suggestion to the community here is that somebody come forward or get together a group of people to get an idea with something cohesive that makes sense for this community, and not just to make sense and prove it. You need to prove it. You need to show why it's good for this community here in Taos specifically. Not because it's an example from Portland or Albuquerque, but something that would work here. Why is it progressive? Why is it taking us to the next level? I think that's what needs to happen. So,
Commissioner Lee, if I may, there's agricultural uses are allowed in the LUDC, and right now they're kind of back in the RA20, RA10 zone designations, and I think there's a lot of useful language in those, and if an ordinance was brought forward, I think the simpler the better.
Okay.
So I think there's language in here that permits agricultural uses. Agricultural uses are a definition within our LUDC, and then there's incompatible uses that are defined. And I think the definitions that we have in here for incompatible uses in terms of livestock are completely applicable to C1 and C2 zones. So it limits the number of animals in ratio to the amount of land, and I think these would be perfectly fine to allow to use these definitions in the C1 and C2 zones. But I agree. I think it needs to be a community effort, and I would volunteer, and I would be willing to help drafting an ordinance that's applicable in the C1 and C2 zones for agricultural uses.
and I'd join you in that.
Yep.
And Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, just as a point of information, it's important to understand that a lot of the commercial zones we do have are along the main stretch of road that runs through town, Paseo del Pueblo Sur, Paseo del Pueblo Norte. Basically, most of the commercially zoned properties we have run along those main roads, so that just needs to be part of the discussion when people start talking about what would be allowed as far as agricultural uses and things like that, because
So when this comes back to the commission, we could easily look at a zoning map, and you
exactly.
can see what zones you're affecting.
Yeah, that way, it's just so as a point of information, that that's something to consider when you're looking at possible agricultural uses in these commercial zones. That how intense do you want to go as far as allowing certain agricultural uses or not? Because again, this is our most visible section of the town of Taos, is through the main road, and that's where most of our commercial zoning is. So that's just something to keep in mind when this discussion starts happening.
Thank you, Mr. Perea.
Thank you, Mr.
Commissioner
Chairman.
Lukes, do you have one more?
Yeah, I just want to comment on what Rudy Perea just said. I agree with that, but most of those vacant commercial lots look disgusting, with trash strewn all over them among the sagebrush, so any agricultural use would probably be an improvement to those.
Mr.
Chairman, if I might.
Commissioner Garcia, and then Mr. James.
I just want to bring this all back. We're talking about what I think we all support, but there's two things out here. One, I just want to try to understand there's no quick issue that we need to deal with. They're going to shut down the particular farming operation that's taking place. If that's fine and there's nothing that's going to happen in the next 30 to 45 days, then we can continue going forward with the zoning change or addition. But I would also like to bring into, as has been mentioned, the new director that will be here. So it's great that both you and Mr. Lee have volunteered. I just want to make sure that the town's brought into it as well and have that discussion. So, because from us, it goes to the council, and what we don't want to happen is we think that we have something that would work for everybody, and then it gets shut down at the council level. So, we need to get everybody involved.
Thank you, Commissioner
I will
Garcia.
volunteer as well, by
Agreed.
the way.
Thank you, Commissioner Lukes. Mr. James.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I hear that the commission wants to try to do this on an expedited basis, and certainly have no objection to that. Experience tells me that if we're going to try to start tinkering with the agricultural definition, then we're going to hear from people who love alpaca farming, all sorts of other stuff. the quickest way to get from A to B here is to draft a community garden ordinance. This happened in the city of Detroit, which went from being a major American city to a urban prairie. And so I have some experience in the community garden area. Anyway, that's the quickest way to do this, because if you have a community garden ordinance that can be done on an annual basis, you develop some criteria, and that way you're not changing the entire flavor of the commercial district forever and always, but you are allowing this sort of extremely useful, as opposed to a litter field use. And I think that that is a lot easier and a lot shorter ordinance to write than it is to try to start tinkering with the definition of agriculture. We'll be doing that next summer at this time, would be my guess.
Thank you.
Is there a way, Mr. James, then?
Commissioner Lee.
To get a copy of that community garden ordinance so we can tinker with that?
Yeah, I think if you Google community garden ordinances, you'll find bunches of them.
I thought maybe you had a Word document since you helped.
No, I leave all that stuff in my previous jurisdiction if I leave the jurisdiction. I just happen to know people that have been working on this, and it is very sensitive. And I'm sure that the quickest way to do this is to develop a community garden ordinance and an application process that would sort of mirror a variance process to protect the other parcels around. It doesn't permanently change anything, but does allow land that is not currently selling, moving, whatever, for whatever reason, to be put to a productive use in a way that protects the neighbors and the town, and can be done much, much quicker than changing the entire agricultural definition, unless we want to hear from every animal farmer in Taos County as well. And there are a lot of them.
Thank you, Mr. James. If the commission doesn't have any other discussion, I think we'll go ahead. Is there anybody else from the audience who'd like to add something to our discussion? I saw a couple hands up back there.
Come on.
Has that passed? Micah, do you want to come back up?
Okay, I wasn't certain, like, where we would end up, whether we would have someone looking at how to basically use the land. I don't know if it's the land use code that Matt Foster was working with that's already, is that what that is?
This is called the Land Use Development Code.
Yeah.
And this commission basically interprets and makes decisions by this
Okay.
Bible, if you might.
Right.
Yep.
Okay. And I just wanted to point out that as I was listening, I wasn't certain if then every time somebody wanted to make a garden on a commercial piece of land, they would be coming before you to get with the community garden ordinance.
I think
It's
there's
jumping ahead.
I think there's a defined difference between a garden and an agricultural use.
Right.
In our land use development code, agricultural use is a commercial
Right.
agricultural use.
Right.
And so that does not apply to an individual garden for
right.
an
Okay.
individual person.
And I did just want to also just point out that we mostly have been. I think the real value of this project has been the education with the schools, with the programs, with UNM. But part of what needs to really also be shown and learned by the upcoming farmers is how to do production and like actually how to sell vegetables. Like we need that incorporated into our whole food structure, not just St. James Pantry, which we do that too. Mm-hmm. So I just wanted to make it clear that we'd be selling at the farmers market. We would be having a productive farm. And I actually go around and encourage people to do that. So I would just want to encourage. And then also I think that somebody was mentioning like the, how many 1 cow per acre, or you have to have 5 acres to have one animal. Like there are issues that happen around weeds, noxious weeds, that grazing animals actually have always traditionally taken care of that. And I don't know if you know that we actually have a moratorium on pesticide use here by the state highway department. Cannot spray the roadsides in Taos County, which is a fantastic thing that we have. And so I just want to point out that a few grazing animals, a small density of animals, is actually a really positive thing. And So since you're looking at this, I would just, I guess, may as well take a look at it.
Perfect.
So thank you.
Mr. Chairman?
Commissioner, let's see, Commissioner Lukes.
Perhaps someone from the audience might want to participate in our effort to come up with an ordinance.
Agreed. Is there anybody else from the audience who'd like to speak? Okay.
Well, I would participate.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Mike. Any other discussion from the commissioners or from staff? I would say, our general direction is, I think you have a commission that is in favor of helping define agricultural uses in commercial zones. And I think it would be appropriate, I would say it would be appropriate after this meeting if you want to make any arrangements to meet again. I don't know if the email addresses for this commission are available anywhere publicly, whether that's online. I don't want to make the public that's here. You don't have to necessarily stick around for our next discussion regarding the streamlining of the zone change application review process. I don't know if somebody wants to, yeah, let's just leave it from there. I think we know each other in the community, and if there's a group of people who would like to get together and help draft an ordinance, I think we've offered to do that as well. And let's leave it at that for tonight.
Mr. Chairman, are we going to place it on the agenda for next?
Commissioner Garcia?
Or should we just allow some time to evaluate and then come back with it on this?
Rudy, what would be the process if we were going to bring an ordinance in front of the commission to be adopted? Does it go through 2 hearings, or is it a single step before it goes to town council?
It would go through 2 public hearings, Mr. Chairman, which means, of course, that we would have to notify the neighbors and put an ad in the newspaper and things like that. So,
well, there wouldn't be. This isn't going to apply to one property.
I'm sorry. No, my apologies. We would have to put an ad in the newspaper.
Okay.
And that would be, something that the town would have to pay for. And of course, before that happens, what we would have to do is we would obviously have to draft the ordinance, and then we would have to get the town attorney's blessings on it. And then once that happens, then we could bring it to you, and then we can have it as 2 public hearings, and then we can forward it to the town council, and they would make the final decision on whether or not to amend the LUDC to allow for these types of uses.
So, Commissioner Garcia, I think we would direct staff to, under matters of staff for our next public meeting, would be to, if there's one available, to bring a draft of an ordinance to allow agricultural uses in commercial zones.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, it would be too soon for the department to bring you forward such a draft ordinance, because right now, we can discuss that under matters from commissioners, but it would just be too soon for the department to bring it to you next month.
I would recommend that we still place it on the agenda for discussion, just so we know the status where it's at.
Let's put it under matters from commissioners.
Okay.
And if the one or more commissioners have a draft ordinance ready for review at our next meeting, we can take it from there. Okay. Thank you, everyone, for coming tonight. We appreciate your time and your consideration.
Thank you.
With that, we'll move on to item 7B, discussion regarding the streamlining the zone change application review process. Rudy.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. This was another item that I was, that our acting planning and zoning director wanted me to put on the agenda. And it was my understanding from the discussion, the brief discussion I had with our director, was that he was proposing to streamline the zone change application process by only requiring 2 public hearings. In other words, there would only be 1 public hearing before the Planning and Zoning Commission, and then 1 final public hearing before the Town Council. So in other words, the way the current process stands, in the Land Use Development Code, you would have before the Commission 1 preliminary public hearing, 1 final public hearing, and then another public hearing before the Town Council. So it was my understanding from my acting director that he wanted to streamline that by cutting out one of the public hearings from the commission level, and then, just taking it forward to town council after one hearing before you. So at this point, that's what I understand my boss's direction to be on this item.
Any comments from commissioners?
I have a comment.
Commissioner Lukes.
Why are we limiting it just to zone change? I mean, the whole idea behind streamlining from day one was not only about zone changes, but variances, conditional use permits.
Mr. James will take all that home with him.
But please, it's very fresh, harvested today. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Lukes, I couldn't answer that question. My acting boss would have to do that for you. But what I can tell you is we are in the process of working with the consultants that were hired by the town of Taos to review all our processes, how we issue building permits, how we do planning and zoning commission cases, historic preservation commission cases, and how we issue business license, et cetera, et cetera. So we're in the middle of that process of working with them, because what they're at this point, the stage in the process is that we're providing them with the information that they need, on how we currently do things. And so it's my understanding that I think they have all the information they need. So what they're going to do at this point is they're going to evaluate our current processes, and then they're going to give my boss and us ideas on how we can streamline the process. So on those other things, that's what's currently happening is, we're actively consulting with the people the town hired to review our departmental processes.
Mr. Chair, I have a follow-up question.
Sure.
So, I don't know, for 2 years we've been told, yeah, we're working on it.
Yes.
So has the process of reviewing or coming up with streamlining these processes, has that stalled because of the planning director left and shortage in the planning department, or are these consultants actually focused on developing streamlining processes for all of these items that become before us?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Lukes, what you just stated is correct. That they are currently in the process of evaluating how we do things now, and then they're going to come back to us with recommendations on how to streamline our processes. And so that's, in other words, it's not stalled. They're just in the process of doing that, making recommendations to the department as to what can be streamlined, and
And my last question, how long is it going to take them?
That I do not know. I know they have a time frame within their contract that they have to meet as far as deliverables to us, and I believe it's by the end of August that they have to, complete their review of our processes and come back to us with recommendations on what we can streamline and, things like that.
Would you please keep this commission informed about the progress and when they'll be done with it?
Sure. I can, if you would like, Commissioner Lukes and Commission in general, if you'd like me to put that as a discussion item under matters from staff next month, I can do so and inform you of what the progress is.
Commissioner Lukes, I think there's also been, I don't know how broadly this has been out there. I think it's kind of been by invitation, but the firm working on this is ARC. It's called Architectural Resource Consultants. The main lead person there is Steve Bernstein.
Yes, that's
correct. And I've been in contact with them. They've called and interviewed me about the processes, and I would be happy to forward their information or recommend that they interview you as well, since this has been an issue of concern for yourself.
Well, it's been my pet project from day one.
So I think I'll recommend to him that I'll give him your contact information for an interview as well. I would also provide him, if you guys don't mind, I may provide him with the email addresses of the commission. If you have any input, you're welcome to provide it.
Thanks.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. James.
I think there's another shoe here. Certainly, I know I'm more than familiar with trying to generally streamline, but we have the Boundary Commission results, 327 parcels that need to be zoned, And I believe that the town manager's immediate concern is to try and figure out a way to get those rezonings through this commission and through the town council in some sort of expedited fashion. So it's quite separate and apart from the general, we need to be better at delivering services to the public quicker, is the incredible conundrum of 327 lots to zone. And that's, I should tell you, the Boundary Commission has not yet issued their order, but when they do, we have to at least undertake the process of beginning those rezonings, and it seemed that having 2 hearings in front of this commission relative to that was excessive, or perhaps was excessive. So I think that the manager is looking for input from the commission as to whether the commission thought that the community could tolerate on the annexation rezonings a different process.
Mr. James, thank you. Just from my personal opinion, I think we'd be perfectly fine with a 2-step zone change application review as opposed to a preliminary and public hearing in front of this commission. I think we could have a single public hearing in front of this commission, and then it could go to town council. I would be in favor of that.
Me too.
I agree.
Music to my ears. Only with the exception when there is some point of contention.
If there's a point of contention at this level, we can choose to table that to another meeting,
Right.
and give the public another opportunity for input at our level, as the town council can choose to do that as well.
Well, you can contend up a storm at one public hearing. You don't need 2.
It might be long reading.
Any other discussion on agenda item 7B? If none, let's go ahead and move to agenda item 8A. And this was a request by Commissioner Lee for the status of the planning department.
So should I state it specifically, I guess?
Commissioner Lee.
My specific request is for somebody on staff to explain what has happened or what is happening to the planning department, where it's going, what's the future of it, and is there any rumor of merging with the county, and why don't we know anything other than the fact that we can see that the planning department is down to 2 people, 1 person.
I think it's merging by default because everybody who quits the town goes to the county.
Is it, for clarification, are we, did we lose 1 more employee beyond David Martinez?
Mr. Chairman, well, as per, mentioned by the town attorney, we did receive a resignation letter. Well, the personnel department received a resignation letter from Rachel Romero. Her last day will be July 12th. And so at this point, the people remaining in the planning department will be myself and our secretary, Dinah Gonzalez.
Thank you.
Thank you. And beyond that, I don't know if we should discuss the matter as far, because these are personnel issues. So I think, just for the general public's information, I think that's as far as I can go unless the town attorney directs me to, get into further details as to the status of our department.
Thank you, Rudy.
Thank you.
Mayor, Commissioner Lee, yeah. My question isn't to do with really the personnel issues. My question has to do with town strategy. I mean, this is more of like there's a manager position on this, because, it seems to me that this isn't just an attrition issue for saving money. This is actually, you're watching your planning department dissolve before your very eyes. And maybe that's purposeful. Maybe there's a reason that it's happening. But I think as a commission, we're entitled to know. I think the public is entitled to know him being a paid public employee. So I'd like to know specifically, what the plan that the manager has as to this planning department.
Mr. James, you can address that if you want. Or I guess we could also request that our acting planner, Mr. Rodriguez, join us in our next meeting and offer us some insight.
I'll tell you what I know, because it's not a secret. I know that the town is actively seeking, and I think will make a job offer to a new planning director. I'm not aware that there's any plan behind the departures. As far as I know, it just happened. I think that there's been some delay in filling positions, wanting some input from the new planning director because that's the staff that he or she will have to use. And I have not participated in a substantial amount of time with any negotiations with Taos County about merging planning departments, which is not to say that those discussions might not be taking place. They're not taking place with me.
Okay. I think then the request from me was to have the manager give an explanation at the next meeting as to what's going on. Because, you know, we are a planning commission. We are volunteers. You know, we spend a lot of time on this, and I think we all care about the community. And, you know, Mr. Perea has been here for, God, I don't know how long, longer than the planning department, but, you know, we're trying to work with the community here on, you know, how to protect the health, safety, and welfare of that community. And when there's nobody working in the community, like when you don't have a building code enforcer, you don't have somebody that can say, hey, there's something wrong here, you know, it kind of defeats the purpose of having a commission. Because we're kings without thrones in some ways. We're judges without,
Convicts.
What's that?
Criminals.
Without criminals.
Oh, and
So-
I think that the town administration understands that. I mean, the code enforcement person just left, like yesterday. The building person, I don't know, it's been 10 days, but it's been a relatively short amount of time. And we've had a bunch of resignations, there's no doubt about that, but you'll have to ask Oscar himself. I'm just not aware that there's any master strategy being executed here. We just are out of people and we need to retool.
Okay.
Thank you.
Similar to the way we need to retool this commission.
Be nice to have a few more commissioners.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And we're done. All right. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, commissioners.
Information, the news, is the idea that somebody you know